I'm not sure. I think mostly saying my internet connection's unstable too, so apologies if I'm cutting out. Um, I think my thought is we had some finance developments from our select board meeting or joint meeting with select board finance last night, late left yesterday afternoon. We shared those a bit at school committee, but I can kind of cover them broadly here. I
That
can
would be
continue to
great
give you an
because
update.
I had to leave that meeting after like 45 minutes or something, so I couldn't see the end of it.
Okay, great. Well, I can cover just again broadly kind of where we think kind of I won't cover all the details of the 2 hour meeting, but kind of where we stand in terms of the school committee and the school department budget, and then kind of what our next steps are here over the next couple weeks before this group's next meeting, which is February 23rd.
Yeah.
And then I'd certainly love to open the floor up to y'all for any questions based on what you've been talking about at Warrant Committee or what you've heard from your fellow members or just your own personal um, do to answer questions. Does that sound like a good course?
Sure.
Okay,
Yep, sounds great. Thanks.
great. So I can't remember where we landed last time I met with y'all. I think the number we had just gotten from the town at that point was like had been reduced to 1.4. So yesterday, the town, at least had positive news that, with further, I think it was local receipts really had gone up mostly, that they're able to reduce that further for both the town and the schools. The town at this point is kind of level service funded. The schools, we have the revenue gap is now reduced to $1 million, which is obviously way better than 2.1. And so that's kind of where things stand with the revenue gap. Town administrator said he doesn't expect to hear those things that to change much else. I'll say Megan from the select board still left open to say, if we come back, if we have a need, we can come back and have a conversation. But at that point, it seems like we need to get into the weeds of what are the things we will need to cut or do in order to make up that $1 million revenue gap, which we have not gotten into the weeds on. That is happening next week, where the school department will present their first draft of I guess it's second draft, but their first draft was the level service budget, which is kind of out the window. So their second draft with a level service budget minus the $1 million in reductions. And so we'll start talking about those reductions next week. Another piece of the town, or the meeting with the town was the like a $500 free cash allocation. Still not 100% clear where that lands. We'll talk about that a bit at school committee in terms of what we request the town to do or suggest that the town do with it. But essentially, the purpose of that is to support the school department's stated goal of, as we've shared with y'all, of supporting kind of the rebuilding of some reserves that were depleted after FY24 and certainly weren't billed back last year, given the financial situation last year. So they've kind of offered $500,000. There's still some ongoing conversations there. It's not, I think, a done deal that the $500,000 is kind of in the bank. And as I said, it's not 100% clear where that funds would go. The town administrator laid out a couple options, and so still conversations. But I think those are the developments. And so, as I said, we're meeting next Wednesday at 8 a.m. If you want to log in and watch that meeting, and that's where John and Katie should kind of share. We'll have first conversation about cuts. We'll talk further about that on, I believe it's the 22nd, though, when we get back from winter break. No, the 25th, when we get back from winter break. And then the full school committee will hear that for the first time kind of on the 25th. Any questions about that?
Yes. So does that mean that your timeline for your anticipated draft budget has changed? In our previous conversation, you'd said before winter break, you were hoping to have a sort of revised draft.
No, that's what I'm saying. The town administrator will present that revised draft next Wednesday, which is before winter break. So that's still the same timeline we shared previously. That's the timeline we've essentially set since the 14th, which is the week after we kind of heard about the original 2.1 million, which again now is 1 million. So that is the timeline the town administrator, I'm sorry, the superintendent stated they need to have the internal conversations to start picking away at what it is, how they're going to make up that revenue gap, and also have the time to be able to talk to people because obviously, if we're talking about positions, there are people behind that, and they want to make sure they have conversations with people before it is a public conversation that that person's position may not be here next year. So that all has been happening over the last 4 weeks, and the superintendent confirmed yesterday that we are on track for having that conversation as at the finance committee tomorrow. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, next Wednesday.
So, I guess, and if this is getting too in the weeds, just say the word, but so I guess my confusion is from if the financial situation is a bit different, based on the conversation last night with the select board, I would assume that could inform the conversations you need to, or maybe no longer need to have with certain staff members. So like, what's kind of the order of operations here? Like with like the budget versus conversations being had, I guess.
Yeah, the conversations are had before there's a public conversation about cutting that position.
Sure.
So some of those conversations have already had, some of those conversations might have been pointless because some money is saved, which is again unfortunate, but it's just where we are within the timeline. And again, we think it is better to be respectful of people and kind of give them that information up front and then be able to come back and pull it back. We'd obviously love to have had the firm number earlier on, but it's just, it is a moving target. We understand that. So
you're saying Wednesday of next week is when it will be publicly discussed what cuts you all are looking at?
It will be the first time the school committee has heard any cuts since we had the level service discussion. Was that November? Where we talked about a few like cut broadly kind of, some priorities we were looking to make within the budget. And, but yeah, really no specific positions were even discussed at that point. So it'll be the first time we'll hear about any position cuts as a school committee and therefore publicly.
And then on the 25th, what is happening on the 25th?
That's just we're having another finance meeting. So, I think the assumption is we'll give the town or the superintendent, I keep saying town administrator, give the superintendent and the assistant superintendent some feedback on Wednesday or ask some questions that they might need to work on. They will do that work over the break in the following week. And then we will have further conversations on that Wednesday so that we feel at least like somewhat informed and aligned to bring that information back to the full school committee to get the full school committee's thoughts on the first draft, make again whatever additional changes based upon that feedback, share that information out with the community, try and get additional feedback and see if there are further refinements so that there's a little bit of the iterative process that will need to happen here over the next few weeks as these conversations start hitting a broader audience than just kind of the internal department staff. In terms of what I'd love to be able to tell you all is this is the date that we will have the final school department budget, I should say. I don't have that right now. I think that's something we'll need to talk about as a school committee, but I certainly would want the input from the warrant committee about your timeline for, hey, like, I guess we could give it to you on April 1st, and maybe that's before the warrant closes, but that really isn't respectful and doesn't give you a whole lot of time. And so like, what is the timeline you want? And hopefully we can have 100% nailed down budget, if not like a 98% nailed down budget with like a last second change. I don't know. I'm certainly trying to get you as formal and final a budget as we can so we can nail that, move together kind of with a unified budget as a town and close out the warrant and give you all the time you need to do your work.
You appreciate that. I feel like I've been doing all of the talking because I have been. Elaine, Lorraine, do you have any?
Yeah, this is probably a premature question, but I'm just curious. I looked through your original proposal today during lunch. And first of all, thanks for the detailed budget. It's the most detailed budget, that the Warrant Committee sees. It's exhaustive. Um, but I couldn't find the amounts that you all were going to put into reserves. You mentioned it just a minute ago, Mark, that you're dedicated to building up reserves, et cetera. And so, first of all, I don't know what that amount is. And secondly, um, do you know if that is being considered as a place to potentially reduce amounts in order to keep personnel?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to speak for the full school committee. I think what I can say broadly that we'd all agree with is like everything is being considered. We need to figure out, what are the positions at risk? What are the things we can cut within the operating budget? What are the other ways we can raise revenue internally, whether that's changing, we've talked about like changing fees, increasing fees for bus service, after school programs, extracurricular club sports, right? How that can offset the budgets, and certainly the utilization of circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is a separate account from the account. I can't remember if that's within the budget itself, but one of the things I shared with y'all in the lead up to this was the slides are, I can't remember if I sent you the slides or just the link to the recording of the meeting where Katie used the slides. And so within that, she had some circuit breaker balance information that I can share. But essentially, it is a matter of how much are we drawing down on the circuit breaker versus putting funds into the circuit breaker. The state puts funds into it. And so the question is just how much of those funds are we pulling down? And I'll say for FY27, we're already increasing our utilization of the circuit breaker by additional 8% by another $200,000. So that's within the base. And obviously 8% is larger than our 5.2% level service ask. So we're increasing our utilization at a higher rate than we are, for anything else in the town. The question further is, should we increase that utilization further? I'll be clear on the circuit breaker, what I've shared with Jay and others, like the circuit breaker, what we are or aren't taking out of it is not, it added $0 to our level service ask, right?
Yeah,
Because what we did is we altered our utilization of the circuit breaker for this year within the override. That's something we talked to the warrant committee about within the override process. And so we changed how much of the circuit breaker we were utilizing. So part of like what the schools got within the override allowed us to reduce that. And so therefore, if for say we get again $3 million a year, if we only utilize 260,000, that allows 600,000 to roll over and slowly accumulate kind of year 6,000 one year, 6,000, 600,000 one year, 600,000 next, slowly but surely to meet a more reasonable threshold to provide some buffer for unexpected high cost special education expenses, such as out of district placed students that move into the district mid-year, which
right.
is certainly has happened to Milton in the past and could happen in the future.
Are you done, Elaine?
For now, yes.
I just have a general question, just because people have asked me, but the overall level of students, has it increased, decreased, or is that a level, is level from last year or the last couple of years? And then the special education percent in district and out of district, has that gone up, down, level?
Yeah, I can share. I don't have FY26 in this document, but I can share. I love my little chart here. Can you all see my screen? There's just a lot of numbers here. So this is like all of our enrollment going back as far as you can within DESE, which is SY07. So the last couple of years, there's also the right one. The last couple of years, you can see our overall enrollment, sorry, is this line, line 8. So last year was a little bit higher, 4381, then 4320, 4321, 4352, 4355, 4431. So SY20 was kind of the high point. And then before that, 4200. So over the last 5 years, we're essentially flat. In the obviously long run before that, which is more the school building project piece, we're way up. But over the last like 4 or 5 years, we're mostly flat with you know, a little bit of an uptick over the last couple of years.
Mhm.
And then for special education, down here, you know, our total number of special education students has increased kind of significantly over time, as you can see. Again, SY24 was the last year I was able to pull for this when it happened. It was 18.6% of our population, which is the highest Milton had ever seen. And then ELL students similarly are, you know, going up and up and up. So
Lorraine, did you ask about out of district?
Yes.
So I think last night, excuse me, Danielle Wetmore presented, and I think the number, give or take 1 or 2, I think she said last year we were at 65, and this year we're at like 48 out of district. So that's gone down. I think, I don't know if you guys remember. So it's in that ballpark.
yeah,
There's a decreased number out of district.
the number in my head was a decrease by 16.
Yeah.
But again, I might be.
But that wouldn't necessarily affect the cost depending upon what kind of out-of-district placement it was, right? If those 48 are more expensive placements than the 60, whatever, it can go up and down.
Yeah, and some of them it doesn't necessarily mean they returned to district. It could mean they graduated, could
Yeah.
mean any number of things. So it's just a number, but we don't have the cost difference between the out of district placements from. But if that's something you need, maybe you can get that.
I do just want to share just like this. I'm just looking for this chart. But like special education as a percent of district enrollment and ELL students as a percent of district enrollment. Again, you can just see from since the pandemic that shooting up. And again, in SY24 is 18 point something. And again, ELL students too. It's a long, slow climb, but all of those in the last 5 years, especially have increased as a percent of our student population that we're serving.
Okay.
And I'd pull up the current year stuff in DESE, but they happen to be working tonight on their profile, their DESE profile pages. So the website is down.
So if more students are in district, then the services needed to support all their needs, that has gone up? Because you teachers or paraprofessionals or whatever is needed.
So Amanda, if you want to take that.
Well, no, I was going to say, I don't know that it's an apples and apples. Like I'm thinking through your question, because to the question, the number might have gone down. It doesn't mean they came back. It might mean they're out. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know that you could necessarily say because the number is lower out, the need is higher in. I think a better way maybe to look at it is the increase in students receiving services that they saw. So I think Mark just said, I think it's roughly 18% right now, and there has been an increase on that. And I think one of the things that we've noted, that was noted in the thing is in the budget that Danielle, or that's been presented for that I think that there's been an increase in contracted services. So everything from not only like the service providers, but the people that were contracting to do the testing. So I think what they've seen is an increase in referrals. So there are a lot of people, I think it was a huge number of referrals in the middle school So then that's, so then you're having, a psychologist or a speech therapist or an OT or somebody who has to do those evaluations to then determine if they're getting the services. So I think that's where we've seen a big spike as well. So it doesn't necessarily result in services, but that's sort of the first piece of it to determine.
Great, thank you.
I think I can answer this question, but I want to make sure I'm correct. So in the meeting that the full warrant committee had with the full school committee in November, Katie had talked about how there were currently $8,000 in the circuit breaker revolving fund, but I also know that we get reimbursed quarterly. So that's, I assume, why those numbers are now higher.
So what Katie was saying was we started the year with 8,000 within the revolving fund. The number could be lower. It depends on just how it's utilized during the year because we are getting quarterly payments. We're obviously having ongoing expenses. So it is possible. I'm not sure how Katie is managing it. I think it gets in the weeds. She has projections for where we'll end at the end of the year based upon how stuff's going. But it could be that she's fully drawing it down as she's going in the first couple quarters, and then to end the year, she won't need to draw down as much, and we'll leave that final remaining amount that she shared within the presentation about the circuit breaker. It could be that she's not pulling down much right now, and she's going to pull it down kind of all at the end of the year to balance the books. I'm actually not certain. That's a level of like in the weeds on like how she's dealing with the day-to-day accounting and paying the bills that I have not asked. But I think the broad strokes is that the year started with the 8,000, and then she currently has the projection that we will end the year with the million, which is better than we anticipated. Right, we were expecting to be able to end the year with around 700, 800,000, and so we are. It's because our reimbursement is coming in higher than we originally anticipated last year, which is good for a year, and again allows us to build those funds within the current year, and then potentially changes our math as relates to like how we need to build funds in the out years to kind of get there. But yeah, there's a bit of projection with what the reimbursement is in a given year.
But is that projection not potentially changed by the discussion with the select board last night?
So when I say projection, I was saying projection of what the state will reimburse. And that is not changed at all by the conversation last night. I think what the select board has asked us to consider and what your warrant committee chair has asked us to consider on a couple of occasions is to increase our utilization of the circuit breaker account beyond what our original estimates were, draw down on it more in order to cover the revenue gap that exists within the town. And in order to save, positions and reduce impact on schools, right? It's coming from a good place. People just want to solve the problem. But obviously the thing we have to just think about, and we have not had a decision on or anything, is how to balance that and the needs within FY27 with also just the long-term budget sustainability, and how do we, again, kind of marry those two things and not hinder the student experience to FY27, but not create a situation where we're making FY27 really nice, but we know FY28 is going to be a disaster, or we're at least putting the department at serious risk because we don't have places that we could draw down from in the event of unanticipated high costs, such as we experienced again just 2 years ago and last year, FY24 and FY25. So that is the balance, but we have not made a decision on that. Certainly, having our circuit breaker be higher this year than we anticipated going into the year. Having information from the governor's budget on circuit breaker being funded at a higher rate next year is a factor in that. Having information about the town administrator potentially providing $500,000 of free cash as a further allocation to that and building that up through that. Like those are all pieces of the equation that then we have to say, okay, like what does that mean to getting to this goal? And certainly, we're not trying to hoard money or anything. We want great services for our kids. So it's just those are the two tensions that we're talking through, and we don't have a decision on. But we appreciate the partnership from the select board and the warrant committee in terms of how they are suggesting and offering ideas on what we can do to solve the problem within the budget gap.
Thank you. I've
I
got
also
one
feel
more
like I'm talking a
question.
whole lot, so Nathan and Amanda, please just jump in and say, I got it. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna ask about, I just want to clarify on Wednesday morning, when you have your finance meeting, you're going to be talking about all of these possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about more than that because we need to talk about the positions too. And so
Okay.
there's a bit of like, I can't guarantee exactly what we get into just because of the time and the conversation, because we're going to be talking about, again, as I mentioned, like fee increases, that's a part of the conversation. We're going to be talking about position cuts. We're going to be talking about non-position cuts, like operating budget cuts. But yes, I think our goal is to talk about the circuit breaker piece too, as we've talked about, like a way of further refining what is that exact number, that $1 million number, and how we can address it in ways. Our goal is to minimize the impact on student services as much as possible. Like we want the best possible experience for kids. We want the best possible academic outcomes for our students. And so our job as elected school committee members and the job of the superintendent who we appointed is to figure out how to do that within the financial resources provided from the town. And so at this point, the financial resources provided from the town have been narrowed, or the gap has been narrowed, and the resources have been are now pretty clear on what they will be. And so it's not on anybody else, it's on us to figure out those last few puzzle pieces. And then we will share it with you and try and, again, defend whatever decision we have.
Right.
I know this is a constant concern probably, but has any of our federal funding been affected so far? I see Amanda shaking her head now, so.
We had asked Katie about that. She said not yet. There hasn't been any change. I mean, I know that there's always that threat and that you're keeping an eye on it. And I think that's another reason to make sure that we have reserves so that we have protection should things change. But as of now, no.
There was over the summer, they withheld certain title funds, and there was a lot of pushback from states around, you gotta give us these funds, because it did impact some summer programming in certain places. I don't think it did in Milton, but yeah, they held those much longer than they typically do, but ultimately released them, and so those funds came through. But that's been the only significant impact thus far.
Those are all the questions I had, so please.
I was just going to say, to answer your question earlier, I think the warrant committee is still just starting to think about timelines around comments needing to be written and, when the warrant's going to close and all that. So I think we are starting to zero in on those logistics. I would say, but please, Lorraine and Elaine, feel free to jump in and disagree. I would say at this point, it's very loose, but like last week of March-ish, if we are anticipating that the warrant's going to close, early April-ish, just to give us a little bit to write a comment and, amongst the three of us. So I don't know if you think that will give you and you maybe can't answer this right now, but we'll give you, sufficient time to have as finalized as you can by then budget.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful direction. And yeah, I can't 100% say right now, but the time is the time, and we got to get it to you at some point. So having that is helpful as we think about just community engagement when we finally have a draft to share. I do think meeting with y'all during the process will be helpful so that we don't get to the end point and here it all is, and you're gonna have a lot of questions at that point. And so rather bringing you all along the way and having the conversation throughout so that it feels more like tweaks. And we're able to answer some of these things like, what we're thinking about with circuit breaker or, risk to federal funds, just like those other questions, we can have those conversations now and then refine the questions as we go. So if y'all are still up for kind of having maybe every other week check-ins as we go through this process, I think that would be great. I might suggest our next meeting is the 23rd. And I think I would ask if we could push that after the Wednesday meeting, just because I would like to be able to share the draft, but have the conversation on the draft budget with the full school committee and get their opinion on it before we spend too much time. I again mostly like want to be respectful of them, and they are sometimes like left out of these smaller conversations, but also I don't want to waste a whole lot of time talking about a cut that then we go to that and Lizzie and Amanda and Val are like, that's so stupid. Why are y'all thinking of that?
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Happy to find another time.
Yeah, because I think our Warrant Committee meeting's on the 23rd, from what he was saying the other night. So I think that works out actually well for us.
Great, we're helping you out. That's all. Yeah, I don't know if the 26th was, if we talked about that as an option. I didn't pull up the email, but that Thursday night, I don't even know if I'm free that night, to be fair, but
I don't know if that was suggested.
I could make it work if I had to.
Yep. I could too.
Yeah.
let's see. I'm sure I got something. Let me see.
You guys don't have enough meetings.
No, we need more meetings.
I could do that. Could y'all possibly do 6 o'clock?
Mhm.
I could.
Sorry, was that a thing?
Oh, I just said I can do 6 o'clock. Yes.
Great.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I can do 6. Okay.
That's the high school program of studies window, the 6 to 7, but I don't know. None of us are going to that, right? None of us have kids that need to go to that. Great.
No,
I don't even know
I'm
what that means.
graduating, I think, in June. So I'll be going.
Congratulations. Yeah, so 6 to 7 on the 26th would work for most people. Great.
Yep.
Then I will make that change to the meeting invite. What other questions do y'all have?
I think I'm good for tonight. Thank you for, I appreciate you sending along those particular, meetings, the links to those. And I did, review those, and that was definitely helpful. And I was on the meeting last night. So I'm feeling relatively up to speed and wish you luck in these next few weeks. I know there's a lot going on, but thank you for your service. And I'm looking forward to connecting again after the break and following the meetings in the meantime.
Yeah, Mark, I was just going to ask, I'm going to attend the meeting Wednesday morning and throughout the process for the finance subcommittee meetings. And I know I can't speak at those meetings, but is it okay if I follow up with you after those meetings if I do have questions about stuff that you guys cover?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Absolutely. And again, if y'all are getting obviously your own questions, just to that point, Elaine, if y'all have questions as you're going that you want to send to us, we can try and type back. We obviously, like Nathan, Amanda, and I can't converse, but if you send us emails, then I don't know. I'll double check, but maybe I just take them off the reply and send you the reply, the answers. And that's true if they're your questions or that you're getting them from like a group of other warrant committee members and it's just coming up within the conversation. We certainly at this point have some time, and your time's going to get really crunched when y'all dive into, hopefully it's not too bad a warrant this year, but so yeah, certainly whatever we can do to help carry those conversations along and answer questions as we go, that would be fantastic.
Great, thanks.
And thank y'all for your time as well.
Yeah.
Great.
Nathan, Amanda, anything else?
Nope.
Oh, thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good to see you all. Thanks again.
Yep.
And we'll be in touch.
Thank you for keeping it short. I appreciate it.
Same.
Very helpful. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks. Have a good one. Bye.